there was some talk that maybe they wanted to do you versus Jon Jones in Jon's
I'm
heavyweight.
down, yeah. I think he wanted it or something. I don't know the whole story, but yeah, I'm down. And I'll fight anyone, like I always say.
I'm open to the idea. I've fought for so many years. I'm looking to make as much money as I can, if I'm being honest. I do fight for legacy, and I do know that beating Stipe Miocic will be huge for my legacy. But right now, he doesn't have the belt, and he's not the most famous big mega fights.
And everything changed. Jon Jones is now up to fight Stipe Miocic. He just said it this morning. Whereas he said he was open to the idea before, but he had other options he wanted to pursue before fighting Stipe. He said he would defend his belt against Stipe after beating Ngannou, but now Ngannou is not up to fight anybody right now. He's waiting to become a free agent. The next best option for Jon Jones now is to fight Stipe Miocic for the heavyweight title. He didn't like the idea of fighting Stipe in a non-title fight. He wanted to be for a belt, some high marquee fight, as he said, big mega fight. And Stipe Miocic, the greatest heavyweight of all time, versus Jon Jones, the greatest light heavyweight of all time, will be the biggest heavyweight fight ever since Brock Lesnar fought in the sport. There hasn't been a big money fight in the heavyweight division ever since Brock Lesnar fought at UFC 200 against Mark Hunt. And now with Jon Jones being up for the fight, we know what the UFC is going to pursue. Most likely not going to be Ciryl Gane versus Stipe Miocic, because that's not really going to draw too many numbers. They're definitely going to throw up Jon Jones in the heavyweight division. Whenever Jon Jones is ready, the UFC is going to be ready as well. Until the negotiations happen, because one thing we do know about both these guys, Stipe and Jon, is that they're pretty hard to work with. They're trying to realize their value, but at the same time, they've butted heads with the organization many times before. With two of those guys now in the same fight against each other, there can be a play in leverage, but what we do know is, if this doesn't go right on the table, Ciryl Gane is always there. If Jon Jones is not going to agree to their offer, they're going to look the other way at Ciryl Gane and say, hey, you want to take the fight? Of course Ciryl Gane would do it, right? Ciryl Gane and Derek Lewis are both guys who jumped in front of Jon Jones' opportunity to fight Francis Ngannou. We know it's going to happen again because this is a selfish sport. This fight might be the biggest negotiation battle, and man, the fight is going to be crazy as well. I don't know who's going to win the fight. I can see Stipe winning if it's going to be by a knockout. Him winning 5 rounds against Jon Jones is a hard thing to imagine. He might be able to cause more damage throughout the fight, but it's hard for me to believe that he's going to outpoint Jon Jones for each of those 5 rounds. Most of the damage might come in 1 or 2 rounds. It's going to be hard to see him do that for 5 rounds against Jon. It might be Jon Jones' toughest fight in his entire career, because when you compare Stipe to guys like Dominic Reyes and Alexander Gustafsson, all these guys are boxers with pretty good wrestling. They're all about the same size. The only difference is Stipe hits harder than both those guys. He has that championship experience that Gustafsson and Reyes did not have. He is so ahead when it comes to adapting in a fight. I mean, look what he did to Daniel Cormier. Things are going wrong in the fight for him. He found the body shot, and that's ultimately what made him win. One read on Daniel Cormier, him lifting up his arm whenever he made any kind of action, open up the body. He can find things against Jon Jones, but what we do know about Jon is he's an exceptional guy fighting by a game plan. He is so intelligent in the cage. As long as his reach is, as versatile as he is, how great his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is, how great his wrestling is, all this stuff, those are not his biggest asset. His biggest asset, the strongest thing about Jon Jones, is his mind. He is so intelligent in the cage, he knows how to win, even if things are going wrong for him. He has multiple different layers to the way he fights. Fighters are way too one-dimensional against him. He has so many different tools he can use to pick you apart and win on the scorecards. I can see the same exact thing happen to Stipe as well. If he relies on heavy boxing against Stipe, he's going to run into a brick wall. His kicks are going to be a major weapon in this, especially with the fact that Stipe Miocic doesn't really move around that much. He's more of a plotter than anything else. He has extremely fast hands, but his front foot pressure is pretty slow. This makes it very easy for Jon Jones to be able to actually push Stipe back, using his longer reach, using his kicks to the leg, right? Those oblique and low side kicks are going to do a lot of damage against Stipe, and Stipe's fastest form of footwork, those pivots, can be intercepted by round kicks. Look at everybody who was able to catch Jon. Dominic Reyes, Alexander Gustafsson, Thiago Santos. All these guys have something in common that allowed them to get past the defense of Jon Jones. They have fast feet, man. They're very quick moving forward. Stipe is going to be trying to snipe Jon from a distance, or he could try to pressure him the way Daniel Cormier did, but now he has a longer reach. And that's also another thing that we know about Jon that routinely has given him a bit of trouble. Someone with a long reach. Gustafsson, Reyes, even OSP, all these guys were able to catch Jon Jones because they could cover the gap with reach, right? They don't have to dig in too much like Thiago Santos or Vitor Belfort had to. The best way I can see Stipe approaching the fight is take pieces of what Daniel Cormier did in the second fight against Jon Jones. Walk him down. Focus on keeping a solid defense to get Jon Jones to constantly throw attacks, because he's always throwing different kind of attacks at you and masking that volume by something he's picking out, right? For an example, we did against Daniel Cormier. He threw a bunch of things at him, right? Knees, elbows, jabs, hooks, a lot of kicks, but ultimately that was all a smokescreen for the body shots. And the body shots led up to the conditioning for the head kick. That's something that Jon Jones is excellent at doing. But with Stipe, pressure Jones, keep a solid defense, and walk this guy down into your boxing range. The one issue where I can see Stipe not being able to hold that forward pressure that long is because most of his defense comes to him leaning away from punches. Notice almost every one of his fights, he's always putting weight on his back foot. Whenever the opponent makes some kind of action, he puts weight on his back foot like he's either going to move away or pull away from a punch. This constant weight on his back foot is not going to allow him to keep a consistent forward pressure on Jon Jones. That's why I can ultimately see Jon's leg kicks and head kicks being huge weapons against Stipe. The difference with Stipe compared to Reyes and Gustafsson are those two guys are fast no matter what direction they're moving. Forward pressure, they're quick. Moving away, they're quick. Taking angles, they're extremely quick. Stipe has an intrinsic boxing style that those two guys don't necessarily have. And that boxing style is good against certain styles and it's bad against certain styles. The more well-rounded the fighter is, the harder it's going to be for Stipe to actually implement what he does best. But at the end of the day, Stipe has to put together forward pressure in this fight. Fighting from a distance, trying to create angles from a distance and all that stuff, pulling away from Jon's punches and kicks, this is not going to work. He's way too long and he's way too intelligent, right? He knows what you're going to do. If you just stay away from most of his stuff, he's going to keep throwing different kind of stuff at you. And ultimately, Jon will go to the scorecards, not needing to do much. If he doesn't need to hurt you to win the fight, he's not going to hurt you. There are not a lot of big tendencies that Stipe has, like Daniel Cormier has shown before, right? Jon Jones picked out that head kick thing when Daniel Cormier fought Josh Barnett, right? So it was a weakness for a long time for DC. And ultimately, even Stipe used that against DC. For Stipe Miocic, his coaches best know, because Stipe doesn't really watch fights in preparation, Stipe's coaches have to figure out Stipe's weaknesses, his openings that he's shown before, because Jon Jones is going to exploit those. He's going to read those, he's going to know where to attack 100%. He's going to try to clinch up with Stipe, and knowing that Stipe always drops his hands as he disengages, there's plenty of openings for elbows, for hooks, for kicks, and Stipe can also be pretty easily baited. So man, you could just see how technical this fight can be. Every Jon Jones fight is going to be strategic, and Stipe is not someone who just goes out there and brawls with you, right? He's a very smart fighter as well. These two guys have so much experience and knowledge going into this. There's a reason why each of these guys are the greatest heavyweight and the greatest light heavyweight of all time. I hope they make this fight, man. I cannot wait for it. My ultimate prediction, though, I'm going to have to go with Jon Jones. There's way too much going for him to win this fight. Stylistically, it's a tough fight for Stipe without the kind of forward pressure footwork. If he was able to pressure the way, for an example, Dominic Reyes does, I would definitely go with Stipe Miocic. But the fact that he likes to lean away from punches and not engage to be the aggressor in fights too much, that's definitely going to hurt him, man. Now, we do know that Jon Jones never fought in the heavyweight division before, so there might be something different about him. Maybe he has a little bit more power, but he's a lot slower. We have no idea how Jon Jones is going to show up in the heavyweight division. We don't know what weight he's going to show up. He said he's going to be like, 250, 240s, I think he said before. And that's roughly the same size as Stipe, a little bit bigger maybe. But if Jon Jones shows up like he always does in prime form, and Stipe shows up like he usually does, I have to go with Jon Jones.